Okay, so I didn't learn from last week where I should have got a little bit closer to the starting line before the race. The gun went off and again, I wasn't ready. The starting line was less ready, set, go and more sprint, slip, survive. This week the pavements were, well, a tiny bit clearer, but definitely a lot slippier. And navigating this start was like trying to escape a sinking ship through a revolving door. So my friend Rob, who's up ahead in the same red vest as I'm wearing this week, is jumping down onto the left-hand side and onto the cycle path. I tried this last week. It was super slippery and slushy, but I've got Jakob here just in front of me, and honestly, if I can run at least in a straight line, that's probably going to be better than trying to dive around the people on the path. You can see that the path has melted a tiny bit, but then it's also refrozen, and so where it's refrozen, there's some super slippery patches, and there's some patches where you can get some grip. The path wasn't so much a track, more slip and slide designed by a sadist. The temperature this week was actually -7, with a real feel of about -15, although at this point I'm more having the real feeling of regret with my outfit choice. I of course chose a vest and shorts because apparently I don't respect my own extremities. I'll be honest, the first couple of kilometres were painful. The air was so sharp it felt like inhaling broken glass, and then by about 4 or 5 kilometres in, I think I just got numb. But as I say that, we got a bloke here in shorts and t-shirt, so at least I wasn't alone in my lunacy. At this point I spotted Annette in the green leggings up ahead and decided that she'd be a great shoulder to latch onto, so I'm going to dive bomb into this corner and see if we can get going with her. Now, despite being about -15, it was a beautiful day and yeah, a great day for a race. As I explained last time, it's just over 2 kilometres a lap, or 2.3 kilometres. I'm going to be doing 6 laps this time before finishing down once again on the athletics track. If you haven't checked it out already, do go have a look at last week's 10k, the video linked above. Now last week there was pretty fresh snow on this hill, but this week it's very compact, which makes it a little bit easier to run anywhere you want, but the grip is, well, it still leaves a lot to be desired. I'm running in trail shoes again, which are doing a pretty decent job. And I haven't seen any super shoes so far this week, but the race is still young. The goal for this race is to try and get a sub-hour, which, like last week's attempt at a sub-40, will mean a 4 minute per kilometre pace. I ran just over an hour here before when I raced 2 years ago, but the conditions aren't looking favourable. And, spoiler, if I couldn't do a sub-40 for the 10k, it looks unlikely that I'm going to be able to get a sub-hour. But we'll see. The first challenge is self-belief, and perhaps I'm falling at the first hurdle. First kilometre in a 3:59, so certainly starting off stronger than I did in the 10k last week. This corner was super slushy. You can see all the snow that's been kicked out. They put on as much grid as possible, but it really didn't help you get much traction. But at least we all managed to stay upright. You know what, for 1.2k in, keeping my heart rate down below 170 is pretty decent. Maybe this week is going to be a little bit better. A little bit quicker. And there we go, third kilometre, 4:04. So we're starting to slip back a little bit. Need to pick it up if the sub-hour is still going to be on the cards. The 15k race here does have a lot fewer people racing in it. Just 158 as opposed to the 224 that we saw in the 10k. So it does give you a little bit more space, and certainly some people are pacing it a little bit more conservatively. As I crest the top of this hill on the second lap, heart rate for the first time goes up into the 170s, and with that, probably a little bit of a burst of pace, Annette's made the wise decision to drop back a little bit, and I'm just going to kick on. We'll see in a couple of kilometres whether that was a wise decision. With this nice little short flap at the top before the downhill, it does mean you can give a little bit extra as you finish off that hill. Gives you a bit of time to recover before having to do any further efforts. Although, I say that as if running at 4 minutes per kilometre in the snow isn't enough effort already. Certainly sounds like it is for my breathing. And this nice little inside line around the corner has opened up now. A few people, or at least enough people, have trampled along it and made it a little bit more compact, but still with enough grip. Now, one advantage, of course, of having fewer people is that there's not as much of a crowd to be diving through as you start moving off the front. But it does mean you can get stuck, like me, in no man's land. No one pacing you, no one really to chase, so I'm going to try to catch up with the people in front as I slip and slide around that corner, but I don't want to kick too hard and I don't want to put myself into the red zone. Not yet, at least. The path looks like it might offer some grip, but this middle section is essentially just ice until we get up to this section where you can see it's been perfectly melted, and this was heaven. Come through the 4th kilometre in a 4:02. Again, another couple of seconds down. Doesn't feel good, but maybe I can kick it. Maybe it's just in my head and I haven't set off fast enough. Obviously, if it's a slow beginning, then maybe I can ramp it up from here. Now, you'll notice there are some people who look like kids racing. I haven't accidentally entered a race for children, even though I would fancy my chances in that competition a little more. Although high stakes, it's one thing losing to other adults, it's something else entirely losing a race to a literal child. The reason these kids were on the course, there was a Bambino 3.5 kilometre race going on at the same time, so they're just finishing up their one lap, which then goes into the stadium. Up to the 6th kilometre now, and that was a 4:01, so getting closer to that 4 minutes per kilometre, but you can see my heart rate, you can hear my breathing, it's getting tough, and we're not even halfway. At this point, I have to admit as well, I had already lost count of the laps. I thought I was one lap further ahead than I was, and when you try and do the maths in your head of how many laps do I need to do if I've got 2.3 kilometers per lap, kind of look at my watch and my heart rate is into the 170s. Believe you me, it is not an easy time to be doing maths. My brain's fogging over and my legs feel less like limbs and more like 2 frozen baguettes. All I knew is once I got to the start line, I still needed to have about 1 kilometer on my watch to know that I could then go into the stadium. And look, if miscounting laps is good enough for Hayden Well, it's good enough for me. Once again over the lovely gritted clear of ice section, diving down onto the side path there, which although it's quite bumpy at the edge of the path, at least there wasn't any ice. We're starting to overtake some people now, and as I said before, on the 15k and certainly on the half marathon, you encounter the back markers, which adds a little extra element of entertainment trying to get past. But actually, it's also really nice because you see some of your mates who are also running in the same race. Looking down, there's the evidence I was wearing shorts, but by this point I think my legs were completely numb. I do think I'm slowly reeling in this trio in front of me, but it's hard to say, and I don't want to kick too hard as I go across this road, which I tell you has some of the slippiest parts. You can see the ice build up on the corner there. Across the start line, you can hear me say 2 more. Oh my goodness, there was a lot more than 2 laps done. You're not even halfway. 3 more laps plus the finishing section. Poor deluded man. And I seem to be catching this bloke in the orange snood up ahead. Is it a snood? I think it's a snood. Anyway, orange headgear. As I come through the 7th kilometre in a 4:04, so I think unfortunately less of me catching up with him from picking up my pace and maybe more of him dropping back, conserving his energy. Coming up to the 9th kilometre and we've just about caught up with this bloke. We kind of ran together for most of the lap, but I decided at this point I really needed to kick on. I was losing seconds, valuable seconds, which I wasn't sure I was going to be able to pull back at the end. But you see, trying to get past him, heart rate going up into the 170s, which is not a place I really want my heart rate to be going. Certainly not just over halfway through the race. We come through the 9th kilometre in a 3:59, which is where I want to be. So we're now starting to claw back some of those seconds that we lost. At the halfway point, I was 20 seconds down. So yeah, definitely got a long way to go if I'm going to be getting that sub-hour. I tell you, something you don't want is cars pulling out on you. I think I probably timed it pretty perfectly. Couldn't work out whether that car had been waved through by the marshals and maybe we were just a little bit quicker than the marshals were expecting, or if the driver had just decided to go of their own accord. I do appreciate it's frustrating when the roads are closed, you're not aware of it and you're just trying to get out, but the marshals in general did a fantastic job. Okay, so this path was possibly some of the worst of the paths, as you see me trying to find a line which is somewhat grippy. So this section here was half snow but half concrete and somehow all ice. This part I'm on here was actually a lot more ice than I thought it was going to be, and I try it on the other side where it looks gritted, and I think this is maybe the best of the path, but yeah, it's almost like running on trails whilst still being on the pavement in southwest Berlin. Shout out to this woman who every week rocks up in full head to toe zebra outfit. Love the commitment, and she's certainly not going to be getting cold. These 2 people on the corner, great support. Every lap, love to see it, and it just makes it so much fun, doesn't it? And that marshal there also gave me a great boost. He kept calling me Iron Man as I went through. I think I'll take it as a compliment, but I think it's probably because he didn't feel, as a marshal, he could call me deluded for my outfit choice. As we go past some team supporters for the Harriers, thank you everyone for coming out and supporting, and especially thank you Grit for the photos. Now, by this point, I had kind of realised that I'd miscounted the laps, and I obviously wasn't on my final lap. But I tell you, the numbers were just going round and round in my head, and just trying to, in some way, justify that with not even 10 kilometres under my belt, I still only had one lap. As I said before, it's 2.3 kilometres per lap, so I've obviously still got 2 left, at least. But with that, we go through the 10th kilometre in a 4:04, and again, that's not the number I want to be seeing. That hour is looking less and less likely, but you know what? Just got to dig deep. We're still running for the team podium, and could also be in line for an age category podium as well, so just got to get my time as low and as quick as possible. Through the 12th kilometre, and that's a 4:06. Again, losing precious seconds, which I just don't think I'm going to be able to pull back. Although, there's the Ironman supporter once again giving me that penultimate morale boost. This time in one lap, I'll be diving down there to head to the running track as we did last week. It's still covered in snow, it's still beautiful, but it's still going to be hard work. My heart rate's now up into the 170s, high 170s. My heart rate is already saying sprint finish, but the thermometer is saying hypothermia. Honestly, stop looking at your watch, mate. Looking at it isn't going to make you run any faster. Just keep on going. With barely 2.5 kilometres left, mate, you've just got to dig deep. You've got to give it your all and bury yourself. I mean, really, what's the worst that's going to happen? You finish the final kilometre at a crawl? But yeah, worse things have happened. You're not going to DNF from this point. And as I come around the corner, down onto the track to the right there, the winners were just doing a lap of honour. So I only just managed to avoid being lapped for myself. Yeah. So we have a technical difficulty. It turns out electronics hate minus 15-degree weather almost as much as my hamstrings do. The camera froze to death at the 13-kilometre mark, and I can't blame it. Hibernation seems appropriate in these temperatures. Self-preservation over cinematography. But let me paint you a picture. The final kilometre was a blur of ice and determination. I kicked the line, I battled the elements, and I finished in an official time of 1 hour and 57 seconds. My camera may have failed, but my vest and shorts, well, they were a terrible choice, but I survived. Lesson learned, next time I'm taping hand warmers to the lens. And next time it will be even more of a challenge because we'll be hitting 9 laps of that course for the third and final race of the series, the half marathon. I'm currently sitting in 5th in my age category and 4th place with the team, so it really is all to play for. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out, and I'll see you all soon.